She moved through his mansion like a ghost, silent and unseen until the day her sleeve slipped, revealing cuts too deep to ignore, and the Mafia boss who'd never cared about anyone made a call that would make a man vanish by morning. Welcome back. If you're new and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The estate on Blackwood Hill didn't welcome visitors. It didn't need to. Its iron gate stood 12 feet high, topped with spikes that caught the morning light like teeth. The driveway curved through manicured gardens maintained by people who came at dawn and left before the owner woke. The mansion itself, 3 stories of gray stone and black shutters, loomed against the sky with the quiet menace of a sleeping predator. Inside, the silence was a living thing. Dmitry Volkov had built his empire on that silence. The kind that fell when he entered a room. The kind that preceded broken bones and final breaths. At 42, he wore his reputation like his tailored suits, perfectly fitted, impossible to shed. His hair, dark and threaded with silver, was always precisely cut. His jaw, sharp enough to draw blood, remained perpetually set. His eyes, the color of winter ice, missed nothing and forgave less. He sat now in his study, reviewing ledgers that most men would need an accountant to understand. The numbers told stories, which businesses paid protection, which shipments cleared the harbor, which politicians stayed bought. His world, reduced to columns and figures, everything controlled. A soft knock interrupted his focus. "Enter," he said without looking up. The door opened with barely a whisper. Footsteps crossed the Persian rug, light as prayer. "Your coffee, sir." Dmitry didn't acknowledge the words. The cup appeared at his elbow, positioned exactly where he preferred it, the handle at 4 o'clock. The footsteps retreated. The door closed. He took a sip. Perfect temperature. 3 sugars, no cream. Made precisely as he'd trained her over the 6 months she'd worked here. The maid. What was her name? Lily. Lily Donovan. He remembered because he remembered everything, not because he cared. She'd appeared last March, answering an advertisement his housekeeper had placed. Young, mid-20s perhaps, with dark hair she kept in a tight bun and eyes that never quite met anyone's. She wore the same uniform as the previous maid, simple black dress, white apron, sensible shoes. She moved through his home like water, filling spaces and flowing away before he truly noticed her presence. Efficient, invisible, forgettable, exactly what he required. Dmitry had no use for people beyond their function. His men existed to follow orders. His associates existed to generate profit. His home staff existed to maintain the machinery of his daily life. Emotion was weakness. Connection was vulnerability. He'd learned that lesson young, carved into his soul by his father's fists and his sister's screams. And up. He pushed the thought away with the practiced ease of decades. Some doors stayed closed. The coffee grew cold as he worked. Outside, autumn rain began to fall, streaking the windows like tears the house would never shed. Dmitry signed off on 3 shipments, approved 2 payments, and ordered a conversation with a restaurant owner who'd missed his protection payment. All in the time it took the grandfather clock to chime noon. His phone buzzed. Victor, his second in command. "The Rostov meeting is set for Thursday," Victor's gravel voice reported. "They're agreeable to our terms." "Good, and the other matter?" "Handled. He won't be testifying." Dmitry ended the call without goodbye. Goodbyes were for people who cared if they'd speak again. He stood, stretching muscles tight from hours of sitting. The study's walls held built-in shelves lined with books he'd actually read. Sun Tzu, Machiavelli, first editions of Russian literature from his grandfather's collection. One shelf held a single photograph, his mother, young and smiling, holding an infant. And up. Before the world broke them all. He turned away. The hallway stretched before him, lined with art he'd acquired not for beauty but for value. Investments like everything else. His footsteps echoed on marble floors as he made his way toward the stairs. That's when he heard it. A crash. Glass breaking. A sharp intake of breath. Dmitry's hand moved instinctively toward the gun holstered beneath his jacket. His mind catalogued possibilities: intruder, assault, threat. He moved with deadly silence toward the sound, the dining room. He found her there. Lily stood frozen amid shattered crystal, a serving tray tilted in her trembling hands. One of his Waterford glasses lay in pieces across the floor, catching light like scattered diamonds. Her face had drained of color, her eyes wide with something beyond fear of unemployment. Terror. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'll replace it. I'll pay for it, please. I didn't mean." "It's a glass," Dimitri said, his voice flat. She flinched as if he'd struck her. The reaction triggered something in his memory, the way cornered animals cringed before the killing blow. He'd seen it in men who'd crossed him, in victims who'd begged for mercy they wouldn't receive. But this was different. This fear was old, worn into her bones like grooves in stone. "Clean it up," he said, moderating his tone slightly. "Deduct the cost from household expenses." "Yes, sir." "Thank you, sir." She set down the tray and immediately dropped to her knees, reaching for the shards with bare hands. "Use a..." Too late. A piece of crystal bit into her palm. Blood welled instantly, bright against her pale skin. She didn't cry out. Didn't even gasp. Just pulled her hand back and wrapped it in her apron, continuing to gather pieces with her other hand. As if pain was expected. Normal. Deserved. Dimitri stood there, a man who'd orchestrated murders without hesitation, suddenly uncertain. "Go bandage that," he ordered. "I'll finish cleaning first, sir." "Now." She scrambled to her feet, keeping her bleeding hand wrapped, her eyes still downcast. "Yes, sir." As she hurried past him toward the kitchen, her sleeve, pulled tight by the wrapped apron, rode up her forearm. Dimitri saw it for only a second. Maybe less. But that second burned into his mind with perfect clarity. She had cuts. Deep, deliberate cuts. Not fresh but not old. Healing in stages, some scabbed, some scarred, some still angry red. They ran in parallel lines up her inner forearm, disappearing beneath the fabric. She yanked her sleeve down the instant she noticed his gaze, her face flushing with shame. Then she was gone, fleeing toward the kitchen with footsteps that barely made a sound. Dimitri stood alone in the dining room, surrounded by shattered crystal and the ghost of what he'd seen. Those weren't accidents. Weren't self-inflicted either, wrong angle, wrong placement. Someone had held her down and cut her. Methodically. Repeatedly. Someone had hurt her. The rage that rose in his chest was unfamiliar in its nature. He knew anger, cold, calculated fury that preceded business decisions. This was different. Utter. Personal. He forced it down, but it didn't disappear. It settled in his gut like embers waiting. Dimitri walked to the window, watching rain cascade down glass. His reflection stared back. Hard lines, harder eyes, a face people feared. Behind him, the grandfather clock ticked away seconds that suddenly felt heavy with meaning. He told himself it was none of his business. She was an employee. What happened in her personal life didn't concern him. He had an empire to run, enemies to manage, a carefully controlled existence that left no room for whatever this was. But when he closed his eyes, he saw those cuts again. And beneath his expensive suit, his heart, that organ he'd thought long dead, beat just a fraction faster. The kitchen smelled of lemon polish and fear. Lily stood at the sink, her hand trembling under cold water that ran pink with blood. The cut wasn't deep, she'd had worse, much worse, but her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird trying to escape. He'd seen. Not everything. Not the worst of them. But enough. She wrapped her palm in gauze from the first aid kit Mrs. Peters, the housekeeper, kept under the sink. Her fingers fumbled with the tape. Everything felt distant, muffled, like she was underwater. 6 months. She'd been so careful for 6 months. Long sleeves even in summer. High collars. Tights under her uniform. Never reaching too high, never bending too low, never letting anything slip. One moment of clumsiness and now. What would he do? Mr. Volkov wasn't a kind man. Lily had heard the whispers from the gardeners, the delivery drivers who wouldn't meet his eyes. She'd seen men arrive at the estate in expensive cars, their faces hard, their conversations conducted in rooms she was told never to enter. She'd learned to move through the mansion like air itself, present but imperceptible. The job paid more than anything else she'd qualified for. Enough to cover rent on her mother's old apartment. Enough to pay the utilities her stepfather claimed he couldn't afford. Enough to buy his beer and cigarettes and lottery tickets, to keep the peace, to make herself small enough to survive. If she lost this job, the thoughts spiraled into darkness she couldn't face. Lily dried her hand, pulled her sleeve down firmly, and returned to the dining room with a dustpan and vacuum. Mr. Volkov was gone. She cleaned the shattered crystal with methodical precision, erasing all evidence of her mistake. As if erasing evidence could erase what he'd seen. Dmitri didn't return to his study. He stood in his bedroom, a space of stark minimalism, black and gray, nothing personal except that single photograph on his nightstand, and made a phone call. "I need information," he told Victor. "Lily Donovan, mid-20s, works as my maid. I want everything. Family, address, employment history, debts, associates. Everything." Victor, to his credit, didn't ask why. How quickly? Within the hour. Consider it done. Dmitri ended the call and stared at his hands. These hands had broken bones, pulled triggers, signed death warrants. They'd never trembled before. They weren't trembling now. But something in his chest was. He'd been 11 when he'd found Anna in the bathroom, her wrists slashed, the water red. Their father's discipline had finally broken something in her that couldn't be repaired. Dmitri had screamed for help, had held her, had begged her to stay. She'd survived that time. But 2 years later, she'd walked into the Volga River with stones in her pockets, and no one could save her then. Dmitri had learned that day that protection meant nothing if it came too late. He'd also learned that some men deserved to die. His father had been the first person Dmitri killed. At 17, with his father's own gun, in the same house where Anna had suffered. No regret. No hesitation. Just cold, clean justice. The memory settled over him like an old coat. His phone buzzed. Victor, efficient as always. The text contained an address and a brief summary. Lily Donovan, 26. Mother deceased 3 years ago. Cancer. Lives with stepfather, Greg Hartley, in Riverside District. Works 2 jobs, your estate and weekend shifts at a diner. No criminal record. Stepfather has priors. Assault, drunk and disorderly, domestic disturbance. Details to follow. Dmitri read the message twice. Stepfather. Priors. Domestic disturbance. The embers in his gut ignited. 3 days passed. Lily moved through the mansion with even more care than usual, hyper-aware of every sleeve, every movement. Mr. Volkov hadn't spoken to her beyond brief instructions. Hadn't looked at her directly. She told herself that was good, that he'd forgotten, that she'd imagined the way his eyes had narrowed when he'd seen her arm. But on the 4th day, everything changed. It was late afternoon. Dmitri had been in meetings all day. She'd heard voices from the study, tense conversations in Russian and English. She'd brought coffee 3 times, setting the tray down and leaving without a word. Now the house was quiet. The other staff had left for the day. Mrs. Peters had gone to visit her sister. Lily was alone, finishing the last of her duties, replacing linens in the upstairs guest rooms. She was reaching up to place fresh towels on the bathroom's high shelf when she heard footsteps behind her. Lily. She nearly dropped the towels. Spun around. Mr. Volkov stood in the doorway, still in his suit but with his jacket removed, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. The casual posture should have made him less intimidating. It didn't? Yes, sir? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Come with me. Not a request. Never a request. Her mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. He was firing her. He was angry about the glass. He was. Now, Lily. She set down the towels and followed him, her heart in her throat. He led her downstairs, past the study, past the dining room, to a part of the house she rarely entered. His private sitting room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gardens. A fireplace. Leather furniture. Bookshelves. He gestured to a chair. Sit. She perched on the edge, hands folded in her lap, eyes on the floor. Dmitri didn't sit. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, his silhouette dark against the fading daylight. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. How long? He finally asked. Sir? How long has he been hurting you? The world tilted. Lily's breath caught. I'm not. Don't lie to me. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. I saw the cuts, Lily. I know what they are. Shame flooded through her, hot and choking. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the chair, to cease existing. It's nothing, sir. I'm fine. You're not fine. He turned to face her then, and the look in his eyes made her breath stop. Not anger. Something else. Something almost like concern? Who did it? Your stepfather? How did he? Her expression must have given her away because his jaw tightened. How long? He repeated. Mr. Volkov, please, it's not your concern. Answer the question. The command cracked something inside her. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, not with pity, but with a fierce intensity that said he actually cared about the answer. Since my mother died, she whispered. 3 years. The muscle in his jaw flexed. He lives with you. Not a question. He already knew. Had he investigated her? It's my mother's apartment, she said, the words tumbling out now, desperate to explain, to make him understand so he wouldn't make things worse. It's in my name, but he's family. I can't just kick him out. And he's not always. It's only when he drinks and if I'm careful, if I stay out of his way. Show me. What? Your arms. Show me what he's done. No. The word came out panicked. Please, sir, I can't. Lily. He moved closer, crouching down so they were eye level. Up close, she could see flecks of gray in his dark eyes, a small scar above his left eyebrow. I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to fire you. I just need to see. Why? Her voice broke. Why does it matter? Something crossed his face, grief maybe or memory. Because no one should be invisible when they're bleeding. The words hit her like a physical blow. Slowly, with shaking hands, Lily rolled up her left sleeve. Then her right. The cuts crisscrossed her forearms like a road map of pain. Some were thin lines healed to silver. Others were deeper, newer, still pink and tender. The worst ones, from 2 weeks ago when she'd forgotten to pick up his cigarettes, were scabbed and ugly. She couldn't look at Dimitri's face. Couldn't bear to see disgust or pity or whatever expression he wore. But when he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. Does he do this with a knife? She nodded. Where else? My back. Sometimes my legs. The admission felt like pulling out her own teeth. Never where people can see. He's careful about that. Careful. The word dripped with venom. He's careful. Dimitri stood abruptly and walked to the window. His hands clenched into fists, then released. Clenched again. When he turned back, his face was a mask of deadly calm. What's his full name? Mr. Volkov. His name Lily. Greg Hartley. She pulled her sleeves down, wrapping her arms around herself. Please, you can't. If you do anything, he'll know it came from me. He'll know I told someone. And it'll be worse. It's always worse when. He'll never touch you again. The certainty in his voice froze her. I can handle it, she insisted, even though they both knew it was a lie. I've managed this long. I just need this job. Please, Mr. Volkov. I need this job. He studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he pulled out his phone and typed something. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. That's my private number, he said. If he touches you again, if he even threatens to, you call me immediately. Do you understand? She stared at him, not understanding anything. Why would you? Because you work for me. And what's mine is protected. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. You're under my protection now, Lily. That means something. She didn't know what to say. This man, this dangerous man, was offering her, what? Safety? From someone who'd call her phone she could reach him? It was more than anyone had offered in 3 years. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded once, sharp and final. Go home. Take tomorrow off. But come back Thursday. But the Thursday, Lily? That's an order. She stood on unsteady legs and moved toward the door. As she reached it, she paused. Mr. Volkov? Why are you doing this? For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because someone should have done it for my sister. And no one did. The raw pain in those words followed her all the way home. That night, Dimitri sat in his study with a glass of vodka he didn't drink and a file he'd read 3 times. Greg Hartley. 47. Unemployed for 2 years. Multiple arrests, minimal jail time. Married Lily's mother 4 years ago, 6 months before she was diagnosed. Pension and life insurance had gone to Lily, not him, which explained the resentment. The man was a parasite. A coward who carved into a young woman because he was too weak to face the world. Dimitri had dealt with men like him before. They were easy to break because they'd never faced real consequences. They relied on their victim's silence, their shame, their fear. That protection ended tonight. He made a call. Victor, I have a job for you. Personal matter. Name it. Greg Hartley. Riverside District. I'm sending you the address. Dimitri's voice was ice over steel. He's been abusing his stepdaughter. My employee. I want him gone. Gone or gone? It was a fair question. In their world, gone had degrees. Dimitri thought of Anna. Of Lily's scars. Of eyes that had learned not to hope. Disappeared, he said quietly. Make it clean. Make it untraceable. And make sure he knows exactly why it's happening before the end. When? Tonight. Consider it done. Dimitri ended the call and finally took a sip of vodka. It burned going down, a familiar fire that did nothing to touch the cold rage in his chest. He wasn't a good man. He'd never pretended to be. But there were lines. And men who crossed them didn't get to walk away. Tomorrow, Lily would wake up in a world where her nightmare no longer had a name or face. And if that made him a monster, so be it. Some monsters protected instead of destroyed. Tonight he'd be hers. Lily didn't sleep that night. She lay in her narrow bed, in the apartment that still smelled like her mother's lavender soap, though that scent had faded to almost nothing over 3 years, and stared at the ceiling. Down the hall, she could hear Greg snoring, the wet, rattling sound of a man who'd drunk himself unconscious again. Her arms throbbed beneath the long sleeves of her pajamas. The newer cuts always hurt more at night, as if darkness made the pain sharper, more insistent. Mr. Volkov's words echoed in her mind. You're under my protection now. What did that even mean? Men like Dmitri Volkov didn't protect people like her. They used them, discarded them, forgot them. Protection was a fairy tale, a word people used when they wanted something from you. And yet, the way he'd looked at her. The quiet fury in his voice when he'd said Greg's name. The phone number burning a hole in her pocket. Because someone should have done it for my sister. His sister. What had happened to her? Lily rolled onto her side, drawing her knees to her chest. In the darkness, she let herself imagine something impossible. A world where Greg was just gone. Where she came home to silence instead of shouting. Where her skin could heal without new wounds replacing old ones. The fantasy was dangerous. Hope was dangerous. She'd learned that the day her mother died, when Greg's mask had finally slipped and she'd realized she was alone with a man who'd been waiting for exactly that moment. Down the hall, the snoring stopped. Lily's breath caught. Footsteps. Heavy. Uneven. Her door opened without a knock. Greg's silhouette filled the doorway, backlit by the hallway light. She could smell the whiskey from across the room. You awake? His words slurred together. She didn't answer. Sometimes silence was safer. I asked you a question. He moved closer. You think you're better than me? Working for some rich bastard, walking around like you're something special? Lily sat up slowly, her back against the headboard. I'm just trying to help with bills, Greg. That's all. Help? He laughed, bitter and sharp. Your mother left everything to you. This place, the money, everything. And I get nothing. Where's the help in that? They'd had this conversation before. It always ended the same way. The lease is in my name, she said carefully, keeping her voice level. But you live here. I pay for everything. I'm not trying to. You think I need your charity? He was at her bedside now, looming. You think I'm some kind of burden? No, His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, he was always careful about that, but firm enough to warn. I gave up everything for your mother, he hissed. Took care of her when she was sick. And this is the thanks I get? A spoiled little bitch who won't even put my name on the lease. Lily's heart hammered. She could feel tonight's trajectory, knew where this was heading. In his other hand, she could see the glint of his pocket knife, the one he always carried, the one he claimed was for protection. The one he used to teach her respect. I'm sorry, she whispered, the automatic response. I didn't mean. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. They both froze. It buzzed again. A call, not a text. Greg's eyes narrowed. Who the hell is calling you at midnight? I don't know. It's probably. Answer it. He released her wrist. Speaker. With shaking hands, Lily reached for the phone. Unknown number. Her finger hovered over the decline button. It buzzed a third time. Something made her answer. Maybe desperation. Maybe the memory of Dimitri's voice saying, if he even threatens to, You call me immediately. She hadn't called him. But maybe. Hello. Her voice cracked. Lily. Dimitri's voice, calm and controlled. I apologize for the late hour. I need you to confirm the grocery order for tomorrow's dinner party. There was no dinner party. They both knew it. Yes, sir. I can do that. Are you at home? Yes, sir. Alone? Greg's eyes bored into her. She couldn't lie, not with him standing right there. No, sir. My stepfather is here. Pause. When Dimitri spoke again, his voice had dropped to something dangerous. Put me on speaker. She did, her hands trembling. Mr. Hartley. Dimitri's voice filled the small bedroom, cold and precise. This is Dmitri Volkov. Lily works for me. I'm calling because I have an early assignment for her tomorrow, and I need to ensure she gets adequate rest tonight. I trust that won't be a problem? Greg's jaw clenched. Even drunk, even stupid, he recognized the threat beneath the polite words. No problem, he muttered. Excellent. And Mr. Hartley? Lily is a valuable employee. I protect my investments very carefully. You understand what I'm saying? The silence stretched like a wire pulled taut. Yeah, Greg finally said. I understand. Good. Lily, I'll see you Thursday. 9 a.m. sharp. Get some sleep. The line went dead. Greg stared at the phone, then at Lily. His face had gone red, the knife still in his hand but lowered now. Your boss, he said slowly, is Dmitri Volkov. She nodded, not trusting her voice. The Dmitri Volkov. Greg's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. Jesus Christ, Lily. You couldn't have mentioned you work for the Russian mob? She hadn't known he'd know the name. But apparently, even bottom feeders like Greg recognized predators higher up the food chain. I clean his house, she said quietly. That's all. Greg backed toward the door, the knife disappearing into his pocket. Yeah. Well, get some sleep. You heard the man. He left, closing the door behind him. Lily sat in the darkness, her whole body shaking. She looked at her phone, at the unknown number that had just saved her from another session with Greg's knife. How had Dmitri known? Did he have people watching the apartment? Had he somehow sensed? Her phone buzzed again. A text from the same number. Are you safe? Her fingers hovered over the screen. Then slowly she typed, yes. Thank you. The response came immediately, lock your door. Sleep. Thursday we talk. She did lock her door, a flimsy thing that wouldn't stop Greg if he really wanted in, but tonight it felt like a castle wall. And for the first time in 3 years, Lily fell asleep without crying. Dmitri didn't sleep either. He sat in his car, parked 2 blocks from Lily's apartment building, watching Victor's team move into position. They'd been watching the building since 9 p.m., waiting for the right moment. The call he'd made to Lily wasn't planned. But when his surveillance team reported a man entering her bedroom, Dmitri had dialed before thinking. Now, listening to the recorded conversation through his earpiece, he felt that cold rage settle deeper into his bones. You think I'm some kind of burden? The sound of a grip on flesh. I gave up everything for your mother. Manipulation. Abuse. The classic pattern. Victor's voice came through the earpiece. Target is back in his room. Drunk. Probably down for the night. Do we proceed? Dmitri watched Lily's window, 3rd floor, corner unit. The light had gone off. No, he said quietly. We wait. Boss. Tomorrow. Daytime. When she's at work. I want her nowhere near this. Understood. Dmitri had orchestrated dozens of disappearances. This should feel routine. Clinical. Just another problem solved. But his hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. He kept seeing Lily's face when she'd rolled up her sleeves. The resignation in her eyes, the way she'd apologized for existing, for bleeding, for being hurt. Anna had looked like that near the end. Like she'd learned that pain was her only language. He'd been too young to save his sister. Too powerless in a world run by his father's fists and his mother's silence. But he wasn't powerless anymore. Victor, he said. When you take him, I want him awake. I want him to know exactly why this is happening. And I want him to know her name, Lily Donovan. The woman he'll never touch again. Personal visit from you? Dmitri considered it. God, he wanted to. Wanted to watch Greg Hartley's face when he realized that his victim had a protector who made monsters look tame. But that wasn't smart. Personal involvement left traces, created exposure. No, he said, though it cost him. But make sure he understands who sent you. Make sure the last thing he thinks about is how badly he miscalculated. With pleasure, boss. Dimitri ended the call and sat in the darkness, watching Lily's window. Why does it matter? She'd asked him. He hadn't given her the full answer. Couldn't. Because the full answer was too raw, too honest for a man who'd built his life on control. It mattered because when he'd seen those cuts, something had cracked open inside him. Something he'd thought he'd sealed shut the day he'd pulled Anna's body from the river. It mattered because Lily moved through his house like a ghost, and he knew what it was to be haunted by your own existence. It mattered because she'd looked at him with those dark eyes and asked for nothing, expected nothing, hoped for nothing, and that kind of hopelessness was something he recognized in his own mirror. He'd been 17 when he'd killed his father. No regret even now. He'd be 42 when he killed Greg Hartley. Same lack of regret. Some men didn't deserve the air they breathed. Dimitri started his car and drove back to the estate, already planning tomorrow's logistics. Greg would disappear during Lily's day off. She'd be at home probably, but the team would wait until she left for groceries or errands. They'd make it look like he'd walked away. Packed a bag, left a note about going to find work in another city. Men like Greg abandoned their responsibilities all the time. No one would question it, and Lily would be free. Wednesday morning arrived with gray skies and the promise of rain. Lily woke to silence, blessed, unusual silence. No stumbling footsteps. No muttered curses. No sound of bottles clinking. She got up carefully, listening. Nothing. When she emerged from her room, she found Greg's bedroom door open, his bed empty. A note on the kitchen counter, written in his sloppy handwriting. Going out. Don't wait up. Unusual. Greg rarely left before noon, and never without drinking his breakfast first. Lily didn't question it. Maybe Dimitri's call had scared him more than she'd thought. Maybe he'd gone to a friend's place to lie low. She had the day off, Dimitri's orders, and for the first time in months she wasn't spending it in fear. She cleaned the apartment not because it needed it but because the routine soothed her. She made herself breakfast and actually tasted it. She sat by the window with tea and watched the city wake up. Her phone buzzed. A text from the unknown number, Dimitri. How are you today? The question was so unexpected, so simple that she stared at it for a full minute. When was the last time someone had asked her that and meant it? I'm okay, she typed back. Thank you for last night. You didn't have to. His response cut her off. Yes, I did. See you tomorrow, Lily. 9 a.m. She smiled despite herself. Dmitri Volkov wasn't a warm man. But there was something about his absolute certainty, his refusal to let her diminish what he'd done, that made her feel valued, protected. Dangerous feelings for someone like her. Thursday morning, Lily arrived at the estate at 8:55 a.m. Mrs. Peters greeted her at the service entrance, her kind face creased with concern. You look better, dear. Did you have a good day off? Yes, thank you. Mr. Volkov asked to see you in his study before you start. He's waiting. Lily's stomach flipped. Did I do something wrong? Heavens no. You just said it was important. Go on, don't keep him waiting. Lily made her way through the familiar halls, her heart beating faster with each step. When she reached the study, she knocked softly. Enter. Dimitri sat behind his desk, papers spread before him. But when she stepped inside, he stood, a courtesy he'd never shown her before. Close the door. She did, her hands clasped in front of her. Sit. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. She sat, perched on the edge again, waiting. Dimitri remained standing, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. How was your day off? It was quiet, peaceful. Thank you, sir. And your stepfather? The question sent ice down her spine. He wasn't home much yesterday. I think your call scared him. Good. Dimitri moved to the window, his back to her. Lily, I need to tell you something. And I need you to listen without interrupting. Her breath caught. Okay. Greg Hartley is gone. The words hung in the air like smoke. What? She whispered. He left yesterday morning. Packed a bag. Left a note saying he was going to look for work out of state. Dimitri turned to face her. You won't see him again. Lily's mind reeled. But he didn't take anything. I was home all day and he never. He left before you woke up. How do you know that? Dmitri held her gaze, and in his eyes she saw the truth he wasn't speaking. "Oh God, what did you do?" The question came out barely audible. "I solved a problem. Mr. Volkov. He was hurting you, cutting you, terrorizing you in your own home." His voice remained calm, factual. "That's not acceptable. You can't just make people disappear." Her voice rose, panic creeping in. "If someone finds out, if the police..." "They won't. Absolute certainty. And even if they looked, they'd find a man with a history of instability who chose to leave. Nothing more." Lily stood, her legs shaky. "You killed him." "I didn't say that." "But your people..." She couldn't finish the sentence. Dmitri crossed to her, stopping a careful distance away. "Lily, look at me." She did, tears blurring her vision. "You are safe now," he said quietly. "That man will never hurt you again. You can go home without fear. You can sleep without locking your door. You can heal. But the cost is mine to bear, not yours." He reached out slowly, telegraphing the movement, and gently lifted her sleeve to reveal the cuts beneath. "This was going to kill you eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not next month. But one day he'd go too far and you'd end up like..." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "Like your sister," Lily finished softly. His eyes met hers, and for a moment she saw past the Mafia boss, past the dangerous man, to the broken boy who'd found his sister too late. "I won't let that happen," he said. "Not to you. Not again." The tears spilled over. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just accept it. Accept that someone finally gave a damn about whether you lived or died." Lily stood there, in the study of a man who'd killed for her, and felt something crack open in her chest. Not fear. Not obligation. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. She took a shaky breath. "What happens now?" "Now?" Dmitri released her sleeve and stepped back, giving her space. "Now you decide. You can keep working here as my maid, or..." He paused. "Or you can accept my offer of protection more formally. Room and board here at the estate. Safety. Education if you want it. A life beyond survival." "Why?" The question burst out of her. "Why would you do all this for me?" "Because I can. Because you deserve it. Because..." He turned away, his shoulders tight. "Because saving you means I'm not completely the monster everyone thinks I am." In that moment Lily understood. He wasn't just saving her. She was saving him too. "I'd like to stay," she whispered. "If the offer's real." "It's real." "Then, yes. Thank you." Dmitri nodded once, sharp and decisive. "Good. Mrs. Peters will help you move your things this weekend. You'll have a room in the East Wing near the library. We'll discuss other arrangements tomorrow." He was already moving back to his desk, back to business, back to the controlled man who ran an empire. But Lily saw the slight tremor in his hands as he picked up a pen. She'd seen his darkness. He'd seen her scars. And somehow, impossibly, they'd found something like salvation in each other. 2 weeks passed like a dream Lily kept expecting to wake from. The room in the East Wing had tall windows that overlooked the gardens, a bed so soft she'd spent the first night on top of the covers because it felt too luxurious to actually use, and bookshelves that Mrs. Peters promised she could fill with anything she wanted. "Mr. Volkov is very particular about books," the housekeeper had said with a knowing smile. "He'll appreciate having someone else in the house who reads." Lily had moved her meager belongings in over a single afternoon. 2 suitcases of clothes, her mother's jewelry box, a photo album, and the stuffed rabbit she'd had since childhood. Everything she owned fit in the closet with room to spare. The apartment lease she'd signed over to a young couple who'd looked at her like she was insane for giving up a rent-controlled unit. She hadn't explained. Hadn't told them about the blood she'd scrubbed from the bathroom floor or the knife marks on the bedroom doorframe. She'd just taken the keys and walked away. Greg's disappearance had warranted exactly one visit from a bored police officer who'd taken a statement, noted his history, and filed it under voluntary missing person. No investigation. No follow-up. Just like Dmitri had said. The man had simply ceased to exist. At first, Lily had waited for the guilt to come. She'd lie awake in her new room, soft sheets and silence around her, and probe at her feelings like a tongue searching for a sore tooth. But there was no guilt. Only relief so profound it sometimes made her cry. And something else. Something she didn't have a name for yet. Her days had changed entirely. She still helped around the estate. Old habits died hard, but Mrs. Peters gently redirected her toward lighter tasks. Arranging flowers. Organizing the library. Helping plan menus. "You're not staff anymore, dear," the housekeeper had said. Mr. Volkov was very clear. "You're under his protection." That means something different. What it meant became clearer each day. Dmitri had arranged for a doctor to visit. A discreet woman who'd examined Lily's scars without judgment and prescribed cream to help them fade. "They'll never disappear completely," she'd said gently, "but they'll become less visible with time and care." He'd also hired a tutor. "You mentioned you dropped out of college when your mother got sick," he'd said one morning over breakfast. Another new thing. He'd started joining her for coffee before his meetings. "If you want to finish your degree, I'll arrange it." "I can't afford." "I can." His tone left no room for argument. "Consider it an investment. Smart, educated people are valuable. You're already smart. Might as well add educated to the list." She'd stared at him, this man who killed without hesitation but offered her education like it was nothing. "Why are you doing all this?" she'd asked for the dozenth time. His answer was the same as always: "Because I can." But his eyes said something different. Something about second chances and redemption and ghosts that maybe, finally, could rest. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything shifted. Lily was in the library, curled in the window seat with a book she wasn't really reading, when she heard raised voices from Dimitri's study. Not unusual. His business often involved raised voices. But then she heard something shatter, and a man's voice, not Dimitri's, shouting in Russian. She set down her book, her heart rate picking up. More shouting. Heavy footsteps. Then Dimitri's voice, cold and sharp: "Get out of my house. Now." A door slammed. Silence. Lily waited, uncertain. This wasn't her business. Dimitri's work wasn't her concern. But her feet carried her to the study anyway. She knocked softly. No answer. "Mr. Volkov?" Still nothing. She opened the door carefully. The study looked like a storm had torn through it. Papers scattered across the floor. A glass shattered against the wall. And Dmitri stood at the window, his back to her, his hands braced against the frame so hard his knuckles had gone white. "I told Victor I wanted to be alone," he said without turning. "It's me. Lily." His shoulders tensed further. "You should go." She should. She definitely should. Instead, she stepped inside and closed the door. "What happened?" "Business. Nothing you need to worry about." "You're upset." "I'm fine." He wasn't. She could see it in every line of his body, the rigid spine, the clenched fists, the way he held himself like he was physically restraining something violent. Lily had learned to read danger in the set of shoulders and the tension in hands. It was how she'd survived 3 years with Greg. But this felt different. Not directed at her. Directed inward. "Was it about me?" she asked quietly. That made him turn. His face was composed, but his eyes burned. "Why would it be about you?" "Because I've been here 2 weeks and I'm not stupid. I know what people must be saying. About why you're protecting me. About what I am to you." She'd heard whispers from the guards who thought she couldn't hear. Speculation from delivery drivers. Even Mrs. Peters had gently asked if Lily was comfortable with the arrangement. Everyone assumed she was warming Dimitri's bed in exchange for his protection. The thought had occurred to her too. That eventually he'd expect payment for his kindness. Men always did. But 2 weeks had passed and he'd never touched her. Never looked at her with anything but careful respect. Never suggested she owed him anything beyond healing and becoming the person she was meant to be. Dimitri's jaw clenched. "What people say is irrelevant. But what they said today upset you." "What upset me," he bit out, "is being told I'm going soft. That protecting one woman makes me weak. That I should—" He cut himself off, turning back to the window. "Should what?" "It doesn't matter." "It does to me." Lily moved closer, her heart pounding. "Please, tell me what happened." He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Alexei, one of my oldest associates, came to express his concern about you living here. He suggested that it looked improper. That it gave the impression I could be manipulated through emotional attachment." His voice dripped with contempt. "He recommended I remove you from the house before it became a liability." Cold swept through Lily's chest. "And what did you say?" I told him that my personal decisions were none of his concern, and that if he questioned my judgment again, he'd find himself without a position in my organization. He's right though, isn't he? The words hurt to say. I am a liability. If your enemies think you care about me, let them think whatever they want. They'll use me against you. They can try. He turned to face her fully, and the fierce protectiveness in his eyes stole her breath. I've built this empire on fear and respect. One woman living under my roof doesn't change that. But what if they come for me? What if? Then they'll learn exactly why people fear the name Volkov. He crossed to her, his movements controlled but intense. Do you understand what I'm saying, Lily? I'm not protecting you because I'm soft. I'm protecting you because you're mine to protect. And what's mine I keep. The possessiveness in those words should have frightened her. Should have sent her running back to the safety of her room. Instead, it made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. I don't want to be the reason you lose respect, she said softly. Or the reason someone challenges you. If I should leave. You're not leaving. His hand came up, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was so careful, so reverent, that it brought tears to her eyes. You're not leaving, Lily. Not unless you want to. I don't want to, she whispered. But I don't want to hurt you either. Something in his expression cracked. You couldn't hurt me if you tried. That's not true. I already have. What? She gestured to the destroyed study. You fought with your associate because of me. You're being questioned because of me. You've changed because of me. Yes, he said simply. I have. Doesn't that scare you? Terrifies me. The admission was raw, honest. For 25 years I felt nothing. Cared about nothing except power and control and making sure no one could ever hurt me again. And then you climbed into my world with your scars and your silence, and suddenly I'm making calls at midnight and ordering disappearances and rearranging my entire life around making sure you're safe. Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. I'm sorry. Don't be. His thumb brushed away a tear with heartbreaking gentleness. You gave me something I thought I'd lost the day Anna died. You gave me a reason to be more than the monster everyone expects. You're not a monster. I've killed men, Lily. Dozens of them. I'll kill dozens more. I run an empire built on violence and fear. His eyes searched hers. You know what I am. What I'm capable of. I know what you did for me, she countered. I know you saw someone hurting and decided to stop it. I know you gave me safety when no one else did. I know you look at me like I'm a person, not a thing to be used. Her voice broke. Maybe you're a monster to the world. But you've been nothing but kind to me. Kind? He laughed, but it sounded pained. I disappeared your stepfather, Lily. I had him killed. I know. And you're not afraid of me? She should be. God, she should be. But when she looked at Dmitri, she didn't see the Mafia boss who ordered executions. She saw the man who'd crouched down to her eye level and asked to see her scars. The man who'd called at midnight to save her from another cutting. The man who'd offered her a future when she believed she had none. No, she said. I'm not afraid of you. You should be. Maybe. She reached up, her hand trembling, and touched his face. He froze, his breath catching. But I'm not. Because I see you, Dmitri. The same way you saw me. For a long moment they stood there, her hand on his face, his hand still curved against her cheek, two broken people who'd somehow found each other in the darkness. Then Dmitri did something she'd never expected. He pulled her into his arms and held her. Just held her, his chin resting on top of her head, his heart beating steady against her ear. I don't know how to do this, he murmured into her hair. How to care about someone without destroying them. You're already doing it, she whispered back, her arms wrapping around him. You're already doing it right. They stayed like that until the sun set outside the windows, until the shattered glass on the floor stopped glinting, until the world narrowed to just the two of them, a monster learning to be gentle and a ghost learning to be solid. That night, Dmitri called a meeting with his top associates. Lily wasn't present, but she heard about it later from Mrs. Peters, who heard it from Victor, who'd been there. Dmitri had stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding absolute attention, and made an announcement. Lily Donovan is under my personal protection. She lives in this house as my ward, and she will be treated with the same respect you show me. Anyone who threatens her, insults her, or attempts to use her against me will answer to me directly. There will be no warnings. No second chances. Alexei had apparently tried to argue. Boss, we're just concerned about security. Then secure her, Dmitri had interrupted. Post guards. Sweep for threats. Do your jobs. But do not question my decision again. The meeting had ended with absolute understanding. Lily was not a weakness to be exploited. She was a line not to be crossed. When Victor relayed the story to Mrs. Peters, he'd added something else. I've worked for Dmitri for 15 years. I've never seen him like this. That girl has changed something in him. Something fundamental. Is that good or bad? Mrs. Peters had asked. Victor had considered the question carefully. For his enemies? But, for him? Maybe the best thing that's ever happened. Later that night, Lily found Dmitri in the library. He sat in one of the leather chairs, a book open on his lap, but she could tell he wasn't reading. Can I ask you something? She said from the doorway. He looked up. Of course. She came and sat across from him, curling her legs under her. Your sister. Anna. What happened to her? Pain flickered across his face. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he set down his book and spoke. Our father was a violent man. A drunk. He beat our mother until she learned not to fight back, and then he started on Anna and me. I was bigger, stronger. I could take it. But Anna. His voice roughened. She was small, fragile. And he broke her, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. How old was she? 13 when she tried the first time. 15 when she succeeded. He stared at his hands. I found her in the river. Walked in with stones in her pockets and just let go. Oh, Dmitri. I was 17. Old enough to have protected her. Old enough to have done something sooner. His eyes met hers, haunted. I killed my father that same day. Went home, took his gun and put 3 bullets in his chest. My mother watched and said nothing. She died a year later, heart attack officially, but I think she just gave up. Lily's heart ached for the boy he'd been. The brother who'd tried and failed. It wasn't your fault, she said gently. Wasn't it? I knew what he was doing. I knew, and I did nothing until it was too late. You were a child. I was old enough to pull a trigger. And you did. You stopped him. After Anna was already gone. Lily leaned forward. Dmitri. Look at me. He did reluctantly. You can't save her, Lily said. She's gone and I'm sorry and it's not fair. But you can't change what happened. I know. But you can save me. She held his gaze. You already have. You saw me bleeding and you stopped it. You gave me a future. You did for me what you couldn't do for her, and that matters. It has to matter. His eyes glistened. You think saving you absolves me? I think saving me gives her death meaning. I think every day I wake up safe is a day her suffering wasn't for nothing. Lily reached across the space between them and took his hand. You turned your pain into protection. That's not weakness. That's strength. Dmitri's fingers closed around hers, holding on like she was the only thing keeping him anchored. When I saw your scars, he said quietly, it was like seeing her all over again. And I knew that I couldn't let it happen. Not again. Not when I had the power to stop it. And you did stop it. By becoming exactly what my father was. A killer. No. Lily squeezed his hand. Your father killed because he was weak and cruel. You killed to protect someone who couldn't protect herself. Those aren't the same thing. Aren't they? Not even close. They sat in silence, hands joined, 2 souls carrying scars that would never fully heal but might possibly hurt a little less when shared. Finally, Dmitri spoke again. Stay, Lily. Not because you owe me. Not because you're afraid. Stay because you want to. I do want to, she said. You make me feel safe. You make me feel seen. You're seen. Every day, every moment you're here, I see you. Then I'm staying. She smiled, fragile but real. Someone has to make sure the big bad mafia boss drinks his coffee at the right temperature. He laughed, an actual laugh, surprised and genuine. Is that your job now? Among other things. She stood, still holding his hand, and tugged gently. Come on. Mrs. Peters made dinner, and if we're late, she'll give us that look. Dmitri allowed himself to be pulled to his feet, and for the first time since Anna's death, he felt something other than cold emptiness in his chest. He felt hope. 3 months later, Winter had settled over the estate like a blanket of possibility. Lily stood in the library, her favorite room in the house, watching snow fall outside the tall windows. The gardens had transformed into something magical, all white silence and crystalline beauty. So different from the gray apartment where she'd once counted down the hours until Greg came home drunk. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. She touched her forearm absently, feeling the scars beneath her soft cashmere sweater. A gift from Dimitri, though he'd pretended Mrs. Peters had bought it. The cuts had faded to pale silver lines, still visible but no longer angry. The doctor said they'd continue to fade with time. Some scars never disappeared completely. But they could become part of your story instead of the whole story. Behind her, the library door opened. "You're going to be late for class," Dimitri said, his voice carrying that hint of amusement she'd learned to recognize. Lily turned, smiling. "I have 20 minutes. In this snow you'll need 30. He stood in the doorway, dressed in one of his perfectly tailored suits, looking every inch the powerful man he was. But his eyes, those ice-blue eyes that had once been so cold, held warmth when they looked at her now. 3 months of living under the same roof had changed them both in ways neither had expected. Dimitri had become, not softer exactly. He was still the man who ran a criminal empire with absolute authority. Still the person his enemies feared and his associates respected. But the edges weren't quite as sharp anymore. He smiled more, laughed occasionally, joined her for breakfast every morning and asked about her day like the answer actually mattered. Because it did matter. To him. And Lily had become someone she barely recognized. The terrified girl who'd flinched at raised voices had transformed into a woman who could hold her head high. She'd re-enrolled in college, online classes in literature and psychology. She'd started therapy with a discreet counselor Dimitri had vetted personally. She'd learned to sleep without nightmares, to wear short sleeves without shame, to speak without apologizing for taking up space. She'd learned, slowly, to believe she deserved the life she was living. "I'll leave in 10 minutes, she promised, crossing to where he stood. "But first, tell me about your morning. You had that meeting with the shipping contacts, right?" Dimitri's eyebrow raised. "Since when do you take interest in my business meetings?" "Since I live here and care about whether you're stressed or not." She studied his face. "You look tired. Did it go badly?" "It went fine. Tedious but necessary." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture that had become familiar, comfortable. "You worry about me. Someone has to. Victor just enables you, and Mrs. Peters thinks you can do no wrong." "And what do you think?" Lily considered the question seriously. "I think you work too hard. I think you carry too much alone. And I think you're so used to being strong that you've forgotten it's okay to rest sometimes." Something in his expression shifted. "When did you get so wise?" "When I started feeling safe enough to think about things beyond survival." She touched his hand lightly. "You gave me that, the space to become more than just my fear. You were always more than your fear, Lily. You just needed someone to see it." They stood there in the morning light, close enough that she could see the flecks of gray in his dark hair, the small scar above his eyebrow, the way his jaw softened when he looked at her. Over 3 months, something had grown between them. Something neither had named but both felt. It was there in the way he always seemed to know when she needed space versus when she needed company. In the way she'd started leaving books she thought he'd like on his desk. In the way they developed routines. Morning coffee, evening walks through the garden, late-night conversations in the library about everything and nothing. It was there in the way her heart beat faster when he entered a room. And in the way he looked at her like she was something precious he was afraid to break. "Lily," he said softly, "I need to tell you something." Her breath caught. "Okay. These past 3 months, having you here, it's changed things for me." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I told you once that I'd felt nothing for 25 years. That's not true anymore." "What do you feel now?" she whispered. "Everything." The word came out rough. "I feel protective and possessive and terrified something will happen to you. I feel grateful every morning when I see you at breakfast. I feel proud watching you heal and grow. I feel." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "Feel what?" His eyes met hers, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. "Things I have no right to feel for someone I'm supposed to be protecting. Things that cross lines I swore I wouldn't cross." Lily's heart thundered in her chest. "What if I want you to cross those lines?" "You don't know what you're saying." Yes, I do. She stepped closer, closing the distance between them. I'm not that broken girl you found 3 months ago, Dimitri. I'm stronger now. Strong enough to know what I want. And what do you want? His voice had dropped to barely above a whisper. You, she said simply. I want you. Not because you saved me. Not because I owe you. But because you see me, the real me, and you don't look away. Because you're kind when you think no one's watching. Because you carry guilt you don't deserve and you turned your pain into protection instead of cruelty. Because when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally home. Dimitri's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. I'm 20 years older than you. I'm a criminal. I've killed people, Lily. I'll probably kill more. Your life with me would be complicated and dangerous and I want it anyway. She turned her face into his palm. I spent 3 years being hurt by someone who was supposed to care for me. You spent 3 months showing me what real care looks like. I know the difference, Dimitri. I know what you are and what you're not. And I choose you. Lily, do you want me? She asked directly. Not as your ward or your responsibility. As me. Do you want me? The struggle played out across his face. Duty versus desire, protection versus possession, everything he thought he should do versus everything he wanted. More than I've wanted anything in my life, he finally admitted. But I need you to be sure. Once we cross this line, I won't be able to go back. You'll be mine, Lily. Completely. And I protect what's mine with everything I have. I know. She smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. I'm counting on it. He kissed her then, soft and careful and full of restrained intensity. Like he was holding something precious, afraid it might shatter. Lily kissed him back, her hands coming up to his shoulders, and felt something inside her chest crack open. Not breaking, blooming. 3 months of healing, of growing, of learning to trust, all crystallizing into this single perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, Dimitri rested his forehead against hers. You're going to be late for class, he murmured. She laughed, the sound bright and free. I'll take the next one. Mrs. Peters will notice you're still here. Let her notice. Let everyone notice. Lily pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I'm not hiding anymore. Not my scars, not my past, not this. Not us. Pride flickered across his face. When did you get so brave? When I realized I had someone worth being brave for. The rest of the winter passed in a kind of dream. Lily continued her classes, excelling in ways that surprised even her professors. She'd found she had a gift for understanding people, their motivations, their pain points, their hidden wounds. Her psychology professor said she had a natural empathy that would make her an excellent therapist someday. Imagine that, she told Dimitri one evening. Me helping other people heal. You already do, he'd replied. You helped me. Their relationship had become an open secret in the household. Mrs. Peters beamed knowingly whenever she saw them together. Victor had given Dimitri a single nod of approval and then tripled security around the estate without being asked. Even the guards had adjusted, treating Lily not as the boss's ward but as the boss's. Well, they weren't quite sure what to call her, but they treated her with careful respect. Dimitri had been right about one thing. Once people knew she mattered to him, she became both protected and, potentially, a target. But he'd also been right about something else. Anyone who tried to use her against him would learn exactly why the Volkov name inspired fear. It was a cold February evening when the test came. Lily had been at the estate library, studying for midterms, when Victor burst in with an urgency she'd never seen from the usually calm man. Where's Dimitri? He demanded. He had a meeting in the city. He won't be back until... We need to move you. Now. Ice flooded her veins. What happened? Alexei. He's made a move against the boss. He's been building support for weeks and he just took out 2 of our warehouses. He's coming for Dimitri, and he knows the fastest way to draw him out is through me, Lily finished. Victor's face was grim. I've already called Dimitri. He's on his way back, but it'll take 20 minutes. We need to get you to the safe room now. Lily stood, her mind surprisingly clear despite her racing heart. 3 months ago she would have panicked, would have frozen or fled or crumbled. But she wasn't that girl anymore. How many men does Alexei have? She asked as Victor hustled her toward the hidden safe room behind Dimitri's study. At least a dozen. Maybe more. And how many do we have here? 8 including me. We're outmanned, but we have better position and— Victor stopped, looking at her strangely. Why are you so calm? Because panicking won't help. She stepped into the safe room, a reinforced steel box disguised as a wine cellar, complete with supplies, communications equipment, and enough weapons to arm a small militia. And because I trust Dmitri. He'll come. He will. But until then. Gunfire erupted somewhere in the house. Victor's face went hard. Stay here. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but Dmitri or me. Understand? Victor. Promise me, Lily. The boss would never forgive me if something happened to you. And honestly, neither would I. You're good for him. She nodded. Be careful. He gave her a tight smile. Always am. The steel door closed and Lily engaged the locks from inside. Then she sat in the silence, listening to muffled gunfire and shouting, and waited. Dmitri received Victor's call while he was 15 minutes from the estate. Alexei's here. Armed assault. Lily's secure in the safe room, but we're taking heavy fire. Get here fast, boss. He'd never driven so fast in his life. His hands gripped the steering wheel hard enough to hurt, his mind running through scenarios. Alexei had always been ambitious, but this was bold even for him. A direct assault on Dmitri's home, his territory, his heart. Because that's what Lily had become, without him quite realizing when it happened. Not just someone he protected. Not just someone he cared about. She was his heart, walking around outside his body, vulnerable and precious and absolutely essential. If Alexei touched her, if he so much as frightened her, Dmitri would make his death last days. He pulled up to the estate to find organized chaos. 3 of Alexei's cars burning in the driveway. Bodies, some his men, more of them Alexei's, scattered across the front lawn. And Victor, bleeding from a shoulder wound, directing the remaining guards. Where is he? Dmitri demanded, already moving toward the house. Pulled back to the east wing. We've got him contained, but he's threatening to burn the place down if you don't. Dmitri didn't wait to hear the rest. He moved through his house like death itself, cold and certain and absolutely lethal. 2 of Alexei's men tried to stop him. They died without slowing him down. He found Alexei in the hallway outside the library, wild-eyed and desperate, a gun in each hand. Finally, Alexei spat. The great Dmitri Volkov, brought running because of some damaged little girl who spreads her. Dmitri's first bullet took him in the knee. Alexei went down screaming. You don't get to talk about her, Dmitri said quietly, advancing. You don't get to think about her. You don't get to exist in the same world as her. You're weak. Alexei gasped through pain. Everything they said, you've gone soft and it'll destroy you. Maybe. Dmitri crouched beside him. But I'll destroy you first. The second bullet ended Alexei screaming. Dmitri stood, looking at the body without feeling, and then he was moving again, running now, toward the safe room. He pounded on the steel door. Lily, it's me. Open up. For 3 terrible seconds there was no response. Then he heard the locks disengage and the door swung open, and there she was. Pale but composed. Scared but standing. Alive and whole and safe. Dmitri pulled her into his arms with enough force to lift her off her feet. You're okay, he breathed into her hair. You're okay. I'm okay. Her arms wrapped around his neck. Victor got me out. I was safe the whole time. I'm sorry. I should have been here. I should have. You're here now. She pulled back to look at him, her hands framing his face. You came for me. Just like I knew you would. He kissed her then, hard and desperate and full of the fear he'd carried in his chest during that drive home. When they broke apart, Lily noticed the blood on his hands, his clothes, his face. Is it over? She asked. It's over. Are you hurt? No. None of this is mine. She should be horrified. Should be repulsed by the evidence of violence on the man holding her. Instead, she just held him tighter. Take me somewhere else, she whispered. Anywhere but here. Just for tonight. They went to Dmitri's private cabin in the mountains, a place he'd never taken anyone, not even Victor. It was small and simple, all wood and stone, with a fireplace that Dmitri built up while Lily curled on the couch wrapped in blankets. I bought this place after Anna died, he said, feeding logs to the flames. Somewhere I could go when the world got too loud. I've been here maybe 10 times in 15 years. Why here? Why tonight? He came and sat beside her, pulling her against his side. Because tonight I almost lost you. And I realized that everything I've built, the empire, the power, the reputation, none of it means anything if you're not there. Lily tilted her head to look up at him. That's a lot of pressure to put on one person. Too much. No. She smiled. Just enough. They sat in silence, watching the fire, both processing the violence that had erupted into their carefully constructed peace. What happens now? Lily finally asked. With your organization? With the people who think like Alexei did. Now they learn what happens when you threaten what's mine. Dimitri's voice was cold steel. Alexei won't be the last to challenge me. But he'll be the example. And eventually they'll understand that you're not my weakness. You're my line. Cross it and there's no mercy. I don't want to be the reason people die, Dimitri. You're not. Their choices are the reason. Their greed, their ambition, their stupidity. He turned to face her fully. You're the reason I remember I'm more than just violence. You're the reason I want to build something instead of just maintaining power. You're the reason I wake up and think about something other than business. What do you think about? She asked softly. You. Always you. He brushed his thumb across her cheekbone. I think about your laugh. Your frown when you're studying. The way you hum when you're arranging flowers. The fact that you take your coffee with too much sugar and always steal the last blueberry muffin at breakfast. Lily laughed, tears gathering in her eyes. You notice all that? I notice everything about you. You've become my favorite subject. She kissed him then, pouring 3 months of healing and growing and falling into it. When they pulled apart, both breathless, Dimitri rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, he murmured. Not just tonight. Not just until you finish school or feel strong enough to leave. Stay with me. Build something with me. Let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt you're safe, you're valued, you're loved. Lily's breath caught. Loved? Loved? He confirmed. Completely. Irrevocably. Terrifyingly. I love you, Lily Donovan. I love your strength and your scars and the way you see me as more than the monster everyone else sees. I love who you've become and who you're still becoming. And if you'll let me, I'll spend every day proving you made the right choice, trusting me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I love you too. I didn't think I was capable of it anymore after everything, but you taught me. You showed me that love doesn't have to hurt. That protection can be real. That someone could look at all my broken pieces and not want to break me further. Never, he vowed. I'll guard your healing with everything I am. And I'll guard your heart the same way. They held each other in the firelight, two people who'd found salvation in the last place either expected. A mafia boss who'd learned that power meant nothing without purpose. And a survivor who'd learned that scars could tell a story of strength instead of shame. Together, they'd built something beautiful from their shared darkness. 6 months later, Lily graduated with her associate degree on a bright summer day. She walked across the stage in her cap and gown, accepting her diploma, and when she looked out at the audience, she found Dimitri in the front row. He was dressed in an elegant suit, looking completely out of place among the casual parents and students, and utterly uncaring about that fact. He was there for her. That's all that mattered. Mrs. Peters sat beside him, beaming with pride. Victor was there too, trying to look stern but failing. Even some of the household staff had come. Her family. Chosen, not born, but family nonetheless. After the ceremony, Dimitri pulled her aside. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his jacket. You already gave me flowers and a new laptop and... This is different. He handed her a small box. Lily opened it with trembling fingers and found a key. What's this? The apartment building where you used to live. I bought it last month. All the units, the whole building. Dimitri watched her face carefully. I'm having it renovated into a residential facility for domestic abuse survivors. Safe housing, counseling services, job training, legal aid. Everything I wish someone had given you, given Anna. You'll run it if you want. Your degree makes you qualified for administration, and we'll hire the specialists you need. Lily stared at the key, her vision blurring with tears. He'd taken the place of her trauma and transformed it into hope for others. You did this for me, she whispered. I did it for you. For Anna. For every person who suffers in silence because they don't know there's a way out. His hand cupped her face. You taught me that my power could be used for more than fear. This is me learning the lesson. Lily threw her arms around him, not caring that they were in a crowded parking lot, not caring who saw. Thank you, she said against his shoulder. Thank you for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me. Thank you for letting me, he murmured back, for being brave enough to heal, for showing me I could be more than my worst choices. When they pulled apart, Lily looked at the key again, feeling its weight. The Lily Donovan Center, she said thoughtfully. No, the Anna Volkov Center. We name it after your sister. We make sure her story means something. Dimitri's eyes glistened. She would have liked you. I wish I could have known her. You do know her. Every time you refuse to let your scars define you, every time you choose strength over fear, you're honoring who she could have been. He kissed her forehead gently. You're her second chance, Lily. And mine. They walked back to the car hand in hand, past Victor, who was pretending not to watch them with approval, past Mrs. Peters, who was definitely crying happy tears. Lily looked up at Dimitri, this man who'd seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up instead of walking past. This complicated, dangerous, beautiful man who turned his darkness into her light. I love you, she said simply. I love you too, he replied. Always. And in the summer sunshine, surrounded by the family they'd built from broken pieces, two scarred souls stood together, healed, whole, and finally home. 1 year later, the Anna Volkov Center opened on a crisp autumn morning. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small. Dimitri didn't do publicity, and this wasn't about recognition. It was about purpose. Lily stood at the entrance, looking at the building that had once represented her nightmare. It had been completely transformed. Bright paint, welcoming entrance, security that actually protected instead of trapped. Inside were 20 units, each a self-contained apartment. Offices for counselors, lawyers, job trainers. A communal kitchen. A children's play area. A place where people could rebuild their lives. The first residents were moving in today. Women, mostly with children in tow. Each carrying the kind of trauma Lily recognized because she'd lived it. Each getting the chance she'd been given. Ready? Dimitri asked beside her. Ready, she confirmed. Together they cut the ribbon. As the first families entered their new temporary homes, Lily watched a little girl, maybe 6 years old, look around her new bedroom with wonder. Mama, is this really ours? The child asked. For now, baby. Until we get back on our feet. It's pretty. And there's no yelling here. The mother's eyes met Lily's across the room, full of gratitude and hope and that fragile belief that maybe, possibly, things could get better. Lily smiled at her. Welcome home. Later that night, back at the estate, Lily and Dimitri sat in the library, their library, with books and coffee and the comfortable silence of two people who didn't need words to communicate. You did good today, Dimitri said. We did good, she corrected. None of this happens without you. It doesn't happen without you either. You're the heart of it, Lily. You're the proof that healing is possible. She set down her book and moved to sit beside him, curling into his side in the way that had become second nature. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Taking me in? All the complications I brought into your life? Every day, he said seriously. She pulled back, startled. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile he saved only for her. I regret every day before you came into my life. I regret every year I spent thinking I was beyond redemption. I regret all the time I wasted not knowing you existed. That's cheating. That's not what I asked. It's the truth, though. He pulled her closer. You're the best decision I never knew I was making. The day I saw those cuts on your arms, my life divided into before and after. And I'll never regret the after. Even when I reorganize your study and you can't find anything? Even then. Even when I steal your coffee? Especially then. Lily laughed and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she whispered, Thank you for saving me. Thank you for saving me back, he whispered in return. And in their library, in their home, surrounded by books and memories and hard-won peace, a mafia boss and a survivor proved that sometimes the most powerful transformations come from the gentlest touch. Sometimes protection looks like violence. Sometimes love looks like vengeance. Sometimes the darkest men have the brightest capacity for light. And sometimes, just sometimes, two broken people can heal each other completely. The scars would never fully disappear. Neither would the memories. But they'd become part of a larger story. One of survival and strength, of darkness turned to protection, of two souls who'd found each other in the ruins and built something beautiful. Lily had been invisible, bleeding, hopeless. Now she was seen, healed, loved. And Dmitri had been a monster who felt nothing. Now he was a man who felt everything. Together, they discovered that redemption doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into purpose. And that was worth every scar, every struggle, every moment of darkness they'd endured to find each other. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this one, you will surely love the next one. It's crazier and more intriguing than you can imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Lily stared at the key, her vision blurring with tears. He'd taken the place of her trauma and transformed it into hope for others. You did this for me, she whispered. I did it for you. For Anna. For every person who suffers in silence because they don't know there's a way out. His hand cupped her face. You taught me that my power could be used for more than fear. This is me learning the lesson. Lily threw her arms around him, not caring that they were in a crowded parking lot, not caring who saw. Thank you, she said against his shoulder. Thank you for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me. Thank you for letting me, he murmured back, for being brave enough to heal, for showing me I could be more than my worst choices. When they pulled apart, Lily looked at the key again, feeling its weight. The Lily Donovan Center, she said thoughtfully. No, the Anna Volkov Center. We name it after your sister. We make sure her story means something. Dmitri's eyes glistened. She would have liked you. I wish I could have known her. You do know her. Every time you refuse to let your scars define you, every time you choose strength over fear, you're honoring who she could have been. He kissed her forehead gently. You're her second chance, Lily. And mine. They walked back to the car hand in hand, past Victor who was pretending not to watch them with approval, past Mrs. Peters who was definitely crying happy tears. Lily looked up at Dmitri, this man who'd seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up instead of walking past. This complicated, dangerous, beautiful man who turned his darkness into her light. I love you, she said simply. I love you too, he replied. Always. And in the summer sunshine, surrounded by the family they'd built from broken pieces, two scarred souls stood together, healed, whole, and finally home. 1 year later, the Anna Volkov Center opened on a crisp autumn morning. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small. Dmitri didn't do publicity, and this wasn't about recognition. It was about purpose. Lily stood at the entrance, looking at the building that had once represented her nightmare. It had been completely transformed. Bright paint, welcoming entrance, security that actually protected instead of trapped. Inside were 20 units, each a self-contained apartment. Offices for counselors, lawyers, job trainers. A communal kitchen. A children's play area. A place where people could rebuild their lives. The first residents were moving in today. Women, mostly with children in tow. Each carrying the kind of trauma Lily recognized because she'd lived it. Each getting the chance she'd been given. Ready? Dmitri asked beside her. Ready, she confirmed. Together they cut the ribbon. As the first families entered their new temporary homes, Lily watched a little girl, maybe 6 years old, look around her new bedroom with wonder. Mama, is this really ours? The child asked. For now, baby. Until we get back on our feet. It's pretty. And there's no yelling here. The mother's eyes met Lily's across the room, full of gratitude and hope and that fragile belief that maybe, possibly, things could get better. Lily smiled at her. Welcome home. Later that night, back at the estate, Lily and Dmitri sat in the library, their library, with books and coffee and the comfortable silence of two people who didn't need words to communicate. You did good today, Dmitri said. We did good, she corrected. None of this happens without you. It doesn't happen without you either. You're the heart of it, Lily. You're the proof that healing is possible. She set down her book and moved to sit beside him, curling into his side in the way that had become second nature. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Taking me in? All the complications I brought into your life? Every day, he said seriously. She pulled back, startled. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile he saved only for her. I regret every day before you came into my life. I regret every year I spent thinking I was beyond redemption. I regret all the time I wasted not knowing you existed. That's cheating. That's not what I asked. It's the truth, though. He pulled her closer. You're the best decision I never knew I was making. The day I saw those cuts on your arms, my life divided into before and after. And I'll never regret the after. Even when I reorganize your study and you can't find anything? Even then. Even when I steal your coffee? Especially then. Lily laughed and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for saving me back," he whispered in return. And in their library, in their home, surrounded by books and memories and hard-won peace, a mafia boss and a survivor proved that sometimes the most powerful transformations come from the gentlest touch. Sometimes protection looks like violence. Sometimes love looks like vengeance. Sometimes the darkest men have the brightest capacity for light. And sometimes, just sometimes, two broken people can heal each other completely. The scars would never fully disappear. Neither would the memories. But they'd become part of a larger story. One of survival and strength, of darkness turned to protection, of two souls who'd found each other in the ruins and built something beautiful. Lily had been invisible, bleeding, hopeless. Now she was seen, healed, loved. And Dmitri had been a monster who felt nothing. Now he was a man who felt everything. Together, they discovered that redemption doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into purpose. And that was worth every scar, every struggle, every moment of darkness they'd endured to find each other. The end. Lily stared at the key, her vision blurring with tears. He'd taken the place of her trauma and transformed it into hope for others. "You did this for me," she whispered. "I did it for you. For Anna. For every person who suffers in silence because they don't know there's a way out." His hand cupped her face. "You taught me that my power could be used for more than fear. This is me learning the lesson." Lily threw her arms around him, not caring that they were in a crowded parking lot, not caring who saw. "Thank you," she said against his shoulder. "Thank you for seeing me, for saving me, for loving me. Thank you for letting me," he murmured back, "for being brave enough to heal, for showing me I could be more than my worst choices." When they pulled apart, Lily looked at the key again, feeling its weight. "The Lily Donovan Center," she said thoughtfully. "No, the Anna Volkov Center. We name it after your sister. We make sure her story means something." Dmitri's eyes glistened. "She would have liked you. I wish I could have known her." "You do know her. Every time you refuse to let your scars define you, every time you choose strength over fear, you're honoring who she could have been." He kissed her forehead gently. "You're her second chance, Lily. And mine." They walked back to the car hand in hand, past Victor who was pretending not to watch them with approval, past Mrs. Peters who was definitely crying happy tears. Lily looked up at Dmitri, this man who'd seen her at her lowest and chosen to lift her up instead of walking past. This complicated, dangerous, beautiful man who turned his darkness into her light. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too," he replied. "Always." And in the summer sunshine, surrounded by the family they'd built from broken pieces, two scarred souls stood together, healed, whole, and finally home. 1 year later, the Anna Volkov Center opened on a crisp autumn morning. The ribbon-cutting ceremony was small. Dmitri didn't do publicity, and this wasn't about recognition. It was about purpose. Lily stood at the entrance, looking at the building that had once represented her nightmare. It had been completely transformed. Bright paint, welcoming entrance, security that actually protected instead of trapped. Inside were 20 units, each a self-contained apartment. Offices for counselors, lawyers, job trainers. A communal kitchen. A children's play area. A place where people could rebuild their lives. The first residents were moving in today. Women, mostly with children in tow. Each carrying the kind of trauma Lily recognized because she'd lived it. Each getting the chance she'd been given. "Ready?" Dmitri asked beside her. "Ready," she confirmed. Together they cut the ribbon. As the first families entered their new temporary homes, Lily watched a little girl, maybe 6 years old, look around her new bedroom with wonder. "Mama, is this really ours?" the child asked. "For now, baby. Until we get back on our feet. It's pretty, and there's no yelling here." The mother's eyes met Lily's across the room, full of gratitude and hope and that fragile belief that maybe, possibly, things could get better. Lily smiled at her. "Welcome home." Later that night, back at the estate, Lily and Dmitri sat in the library, their library, with books and coffee and the comfortable silence of two people who didn't need words to communicate. "You did good today," Dmitri said. We did good, she corrected. None of this happens without you. It doesn't happen without you either. You're the heart of it, Lily. You're the proof that healing is possible. She set down her book and moved to sit beside him, curling into his side in the way that had become second nature. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Taking me in? All the complications I brought into your life? Every day, he said seriously. She pulled back, startled. He smiled, that rare, genuine smile he saved only for her. I regret every day before you came into my life. I regret every year I spent thinking I was beyond redemption. I regret all the time I wasted not knowing you existed. That's cheating. That's not what I asked. It's the truth, though. He pulled her closer. You're the best decision I never knew I was making. The day I saw those cuts on your arms, my life divided into before and after. And I'll never regret the after. Even when I reorganize your study and you can't find anything? Even then. Even when I steal your coffee? Especially then. Lily laughed and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for saving me back," he whispered in return. And in their library, in their home, surrounded by books and memories and hard-won peace, a mafia boss and a survivor proved that sometimes the most powerful transformations come from the gentlest touch. Sometimes protection looks like violence. Sometimes love looks like vengeance. Sometimes the darkest men have the brightest capacity for light. And sometimes, just sometimes, two broken people can heal each other completely. The scars would never fully disappear. Neither would the memories. But they'd become part of a larger story. One of survival and strength, of darkness turned to protection, of two souls who'd found each other in the ruins and built something beautiful. Lily had been invisible, bleeding, hopeless. Now she was seen, healed, loved. And Dmitri had been a monster who felt nothing. Now he was a man who felt everything. Together, they discovered that redemption doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into purpose. And that was worth every scar, every struggle, every moment of darkness they'd endured to find each other. The end. Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed it, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazy and more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.